My son put me on a one-way flight and told the airline I could no longer make decisions for myself. I learned both facts while standing at the check-in counter with my passport in one hand and the suitcase he had packed in the other. Nathan had told me I was taking a 2-week trip to Portland to visit my daughter, Elise. He said the break would be good for me after my fall. He said Elise had prepared her guest room. He said my return flight was booked for the second Sunday in May. The airline agent looked at her screen and frowned. "Mr. Hale, I only see a one-way reservation." "That cannot be right. My son booked a return ticket." "Do you have the confirmation?" He handled the emails. The agent typed for several seconds. Then she looked at me differently. Not suspiciously. Carefully. "Sir, the booking notes say you are permanently relocating to the care of a family member. They also request continuous assistance because of cognitive impairment." I stared at her. "I do not have cognitive impairment." "I understand." "No, I don't think you do. I live alone. I drive. I manage a 42-unit apartment building. And I am coming home in 2 weeks." The agent lowered her voice. "Who is meeting you in Portland?" "My daughter." "Do you have her number?" "Of course." I reached for my telephone. Nathan had placed it in the outer pocket of my coat after turning it to silent mode. He said airport announcements would be confusing enough without calls interrupting me. There were 6 missed calls from Elise. 4 text messages waited beneath them. "Dad, where are you? Nathan says you are traveling, but I never invited you to Portland. Please call me before you get on any plane." My stomach tightened. I called. Elise answered before the first full ring. "Dad? Did you ask me to visit?" "No." "Did Nathan tell you I was coming?" "He called last night and said you had chosen to move permanently." "Move where?" "With me. He said you had become frightened living alone and wanted to sell Riverton Court before the city condemned it." "I never said that." "I know. That is why I've been calling." A security officer approached the counter. He explained that my checked suitcase had been flagged during screening because it contained a locked metal case that could not be identified clearly on the scanner. "I do not own a metal case." "Did you pack the suitcase yourself?" "No. My son did." The agent and security officer exchanged a glance. The officer asked me to follow him to an inspection area. Elise remained on the telephone. The suitcase lay open on a steel table. My shirts had been folded into perfect rectangles. Medication bottles were arranged inside a clear plastic pouch. A photograph of my late wife, Ruth, had been tucked between 2 sweaters. Beneath everything was a blue steel document box. A strip of masking tape crossed the lid. Someone had written one word across it. Grandpa. The handwriting belonged to my granddaughter, June. The box was not locked. The latch had become caught beneath a bundle of electrical cords, which was why the scanner could not identify it properly. The officer opened it while I watched. Inside was a handwritten note, a folder of property documents, a portable hard drive, and an envelope carrying the logo of Crosswind Development. I unfolded the note. "Grandpa, do not board the plane. Dad canceled your return ticket. At 3 o'clock today, he is filing papers saying you voluntarily moved away and gave him permanent control of Riverton Court. He is selling the building on Friday. I found these in his office. Please believe me before he says I'm confused too. June." I sat down. The folder contained a statement bearing my name. It said that after months of memory problems, physical decline, and emotional distress, I had chosen to relocate permanently to Oregon under Elise's care. It said I no longer wished to participate in the management of Riverton Court. A second document activated Nathan's authority under a durable power of attorney. A third approved the sale of the property to Crosswind Development for $26 million. Each document carried my signature. I had not signed any of them. The security officer asked whether I wanted airport police. I looked at the page again. The signature was not merely similar to mine. It included the small downward line I had added beneath the letter H since my first bank account at 18. Nathan knew my signature. He had watched me write it thousands of times. But the signature on those papers had not been drawn by hand. It had been lifted from another document and printed onto the page. I could see the faint gray rectangles surrounding it. Elise was still speaking through my telephone. "Dad, are you there?" "Yes. What did you find?" I looked at the one-way boarding pass. Then at the declaration saying I had abandoned my home willingly. "Your brother is selling Riverton Court." Elise became quiet. When she answered, her voice had changed. Then he found Ruth's agreement. "What agreement?" Elise did not answer immediately. That was the moment I realized my son was not the only person who had been hiding something from me. My name is Malcolm Hale. I was 73 years old when my son attempted to remove me from my own life using a one-way airline ticket and a copied signature. At first, I believed the story was simple. Nathan wanted money. He had arranged a secret property sale, invented a medical condition, and attempted to place me 3,000 miles away before anyone could ask whether I had agreed. Most betrayals become easier to endure when they can be explained by greed. Greed is ugly, but it is clear. Our family's betrayal was not clear. Riverton Court really was failing. Nathan really had spent years keeping it open while I ignored warnings. Elise really had concealed an agreement that could have protected the tenants. June really had broken into her father's office and copied private records. And I had signed one document years earlier that gave Nathan almost everything he needed. Almost. Riverton Court stood 6 blocks from the river in a neighborhood that had changed names 3 times without moving. When Ruth and I purchased it in 1987, the building was called the Franklin Arms. It had 42 apartments, 2 broken elevators, copper plumbing that sang whenever someone flushed a toilet, and an owner who had not entered the boiler room in 9 years. The bank called it distressed housing. Ruth called it full of people who deserved a landlord who answered the telephone. We renamed it Riverton Court because Ruth believed no one wanted to tell relatives they lived in something called the Franklin Arms. I repaired the building. Ruth repaired the relationship between the building and everyone inside it. She knew every child's birthday, every tenant's work schedule, and which elderly residents pretended not to need help carrying groceries. I knew which pipes froze first, which windows leaked, and how long the western boiler could continue making a grinding noise before it became an emergency. For the first decade, we lived in apartment 2A with our children. Nathan was 8 when we moved in. Elise was 5. Nathan followed me through the basement carrying tools too heavy for him. He wanted to understand how everything worked. At 12, he could reset the boiler. At 14, he collected rent while Ruth was recovering from surgery. At 17, he negotiated with a supplier who had attempted to charge us twice for roofing materials. Elise preferred the tenants to the machinery. She organized after-school programs in the community room and argued with me whenever I raised rent. At 16, she calculated that one tenant's increase would consume most of the woman's monthly grocery budget. I told Elise I could not operate a building through individual stories. Ruth told me every number belonged to one. Nathan studied property management and finance. Elise studied city planning and housing law. Both returned with professional vocabulary for arguments they had begun at our kitchen table. Nathan believed Riverton Court had to generate enough income to survive. Elise believed surviving without protecting the tenants was not worth celebrating. Ruth understood both. I usually agreed with whichever child made the problem require less immediate action. Nathan joined the business full-time. He modernized the accounts, obtained new insurance, and created maintenance schedules I resisted because they seemed designed by someone who had never repaired anything. He also persuaded us to purchase the empty parking lot beside the building. The lot cost $400,000. I called it useless land. Nathan said the neighborhood would eventually make it valuable. He was right. Elise established a non-profit housing organization and began representing tenants facing displacement. She and Nathan became opponents in public hearings before they stopped speaking privately. The final break happened 8 years before my airport trip. A property company offered us $12 million for Riverton Court. The plan required renovating the building, combining smaller apartments, and raising the average rent by more than 70%. Nathan wanted to negotiate. Elise wanted the offer rejected immediately. Ruth asked whether the tenants could purchase the property themselves. I called the idea unrealistic. Most residents lived from one paycheck to the next. The building required millions in repairs. No bank would lend them enough. Elise said there were public programs, cooperative loans, and non-profit partners. Nathan said those processes took years and produced no guarantee. Their argument ended with Nathan accusing his sister of caring more about being morally correct than being financially responsible. Elise accused him of waiting for the neighborhood to become expensive enough to remove everyone who had made it valuable. Then I made my decision. I placed Nathan in complete operational control. Elise resigned from the family company. She moved to Portland 6 months later. I told friends she had accepted a better position. That was true. It was not the reason she left. Ruth became ill the following year. Pancreatic cancer took her in 9 months. The illness moved faster than our ability to imagine life after it. During those months, Nathan handled Riverton Court. Elise traveled home when she could. I sat beside Ruth and became angry whenever anyone discussed business. 1 week before her death, Ruth asked me to promise that Riverton Court would never be sold without offering the residents a chance to purchase it. I promised. I believed she was asking for my word. I did not know she had already prepared legal papers. After Ruth died, I stopped attending management meetings. At first, I called it temporary. Then temporary became the new structure of our lives. Nathan sent reports. I read the first pages and asked him to explain the rest. He brought repair proposals. I approved the cheapest options. He recommended refinancing. I refused because debt made me nervous. When the roof leaked, Nathan found money. When the elevator failed, Nathan dealt with inspectors. When tenants complained, I still received the gratitude because my name remained on the deed. I told people I had handed the daily work to my son. I did not tell them I continued overruling him whenever a decision frightened me. 3 years after Ruth's death, I underwent surgery to repair a heart valve. The operation was successful. The anesthesia left me disoriented for 2 days. While I recovered, Nathan brought me a durable power of attorney. He said it would allow him to pay bills and sign repair contracts if another medical emergency occurred. I signed it. My attorney witnessed it. The document was real. I never revoked it. That power of attorney did not permit Nathan to invent my relocation or copy my signature. But it allowed him to manage property, borrow money, and sign preliminary agreements if I became unable or unwilling to act. Nathan had spent years gathering evidence that I was unwilling. Airport police photographed the documents from June's box. They explained that the matter appeared to involve property and potential forgery rather than an immediate airport crime. They offered to contact local authorities and helped me recover my checked bag. I called an attorney named Beatrice Cole. She had represented Ruth and me during the purchase of Riverton Court, but it never worked for Nathan. Beatrice told me not to return home alone. She asked whether Nathan had keys. He manages the building. He has every key. Then go to a hotel. I am filing an emergency request to stop any transfer. I will not hide in a hotel from my own son. This is not hiding. It is preventing him from controlling the place where you receive information. I thought of the silent telephone, the one-way ticket, and the medical note attached to my airline reservation. For once, I listened. Nathan called while I was traveling to the hotel. I answered on speaker so Beatrice could hear. Dad, where are you? At the airport. You missed the flight. I did not miss it. I refused to board it. Nathan became silent. Then he asked, Did June contact you? Airport security opened the suitcase. What suitcase? The one you packed. I did not put anything unusual inside. June did. Nathan exhaled. It was not the response of a man learning something surprising. It was the response of a man discovering the problem he feared had occurred. Dad, listen to me. June stole confidential documents. She has been unstable since leaving college. Do not do that. Do what? Call her unstable because she found your papers. She broke into my office. Did you cancel my return flight? I changed the booking. Did you tell the airline I was cognitively impaired? I requested assistance because you fell last week. Did you tell Elise I had chosen to move permanently? Nathan did not answer. Did you copy my signature? The sale authorization reflects decisions you already approved. That is not what I asked. His voice hardened. Riverton Court has $6.8 million in urgent repairs. The city has given us 90 days to correct structural and electrical violations. The reserve account is empty. The insurance company will not renew the policy. Why didn't you tell me? I have told you for 4 years. The certainty in his answer disturbed me. Not because I believed him completely. Because I remembered enough to know he might be right. Nathan continued. Crosswind pays every debt, relocates every tenant, and places $10 million into a managed account for you. You will never worry about money again. What happens to the residents? They receive relocation payments. How much? Between $15,000 and $30,000. And after the money is gone? They find housing like everyone else. Ruth would have ended the conversation there. I did not. What do you receive? I own 25%. That is not a secret. Is there a bonus? Nathan paused. Crosswind offered me a development consulting contract. How much? $3 million over 4 years. There it was. The number that made every other explanation easier to dismiss. You are selling 42 homes for a consulting fee. I am selling a failing building before someone is injured. You were sending me away to do it. I was sending you to Elise because every conversation about the building ends with you talking about Mom. Your mother made me promise. Mom is dead. The sentence struck harder than he intended. Nathan knew it. But he did not apologize. She is dead, he repeated more quietly. And for 6 years, you have forced me to manage a building according to conversations only you can remember. Then he ended the call. Beatrice obtained a temporary order preventing the sale before the afternoon filing. She also demanded complete financial records, inspection reports, tenant accounts, and correspondence with Crosswind. Nathan responded by sending a message to every resident. It said the sale had been delayed because I had become confused at the airport and was being manipulated by people unfamiliar with Riverton Court's financial emergency. He did not mention the one-way ticket. He did not mention my copied signature. He did mention that a failed sale could result in condemnation. By evening, tenants had gathered outside my apartment. Some believed Nathan. Some believed June. Most wanted to know whether they would have homes in 90 days. I could not answer them. At 9 that night, June arrived at my hotel. She wore jeans, an oversized sweatshirt, and the frightened expression of a child expecting punishment. She was 19 years old, but fear returned her face to 12. I opened the door. Does your father know where you are? He told me to leave the house. What happened? He found out I copied the files. June entered and placed a laptop on the desk. I did not break into his office. He gave me a summer job scanning old documents. I found the Crosswind folder because he labeled it roof bids. Why would he do that? Because you sometimes use his computer. Not often enough to understand the accounts, but often enough to notice a folder called sale. The comment was sharper than I expected. June noticed. I'm sorry. No. You are not. And perhaps you shouldn't be. She opened several emails. Crosswind's executives discussed demolishing Riverton Court 18 months after purchase. The company planned to replace it with luxury apartments, retail space, and a private fitness club. Nathan knew. His contract required him to assist with tenant relocation and public opposition. Did your father ask you to help? At first, he said the sale would save the building. Then I read the demolition schedule. Why did you put the box in my suitcase? Because Dad had your telephone. He told me you were leaving before sunrise. I knew airport security would scan the suitcase. You wanted them to find it. I wanted someone besides our family to see the documents before Dad called them fake. June had understood something the adults had forgotten. Evidence becomes harder to erase after a stranger records that it existed. She connected the portable hard drive. It contained inspection photographs. Corroded fire escapes. Cracked support beams in the underground garage. Overheated electrical panels. Water damage behind walls. The building looked worse than I knew. When were these taken? Over the last 3 years. Why have I never seen them? June looked at me. You have. She opened a series of emails Nathan had sent to my account. Each contained photographs and cost estimates. I had responded to several. Repair what is necessary and wait on the rest. Do not frighten the tenants with dramatic language. We have survived worse. My own words looked careless on the screen. I thought he was exaggerating to justify refinancing. Why? Because Nathan always sees disaster before it arrives. And you only see it after? June closed her eyes. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing when you are asking a fair question. She opened another document. It showed that Nathan had deposited $1.4 million of his own money into Riverton Court during the previous 5 years. He had mortgaged his home. He had borrowed against his retirement account. Did you know? No. He did not tell you because he knew you would refuse the loan agreements. He had no right to risk your family's home. He says he did it because you would not risk yours. The betrayal no longer fit comfortably inside greed. Nathan expected to earn millions from the sale. He had also spent nearly everything he already possessed preventing the building from failing. He had fabricated my consent. I had allowed him to carry every emergency and then rejected the solutions that required me to surrender control. June reached into her bag. There is one more thing. She removed a brown ledger bearing Ruth's handwriting. Where did you get that? The basement records room. It was inside Grandma's old desk. The first pages contained ordinary rent records from the 1990s. Near the back, Ruth had written, "Tenant purchase agreement completed. Copy with Elise. Malcolm signed March 14th. I turned toward June. Elise has the agreement? I think so. I called my daughter. This time, she answered quietly. You asked what agreement Ruth made, she said. Yes. After the first development offer, Mom created a right of first purchase agreement for the tenants. If Riverton Court was ever sold, the residents would receive 6 months to match a legitimate offer through a cooperative or non-profit partner. Why didn't I know? You signed it. The room became quiet. June watched me. I would remember signing something that important. Would you? Mom brought it to you while you were arguing with Nathan about refinancing. She explained it. You said, fine, let the tenants try if the day ever comes. Then you signed and left for a contractor meeting. Why did Ruth give you the copy? Because she did not trust Nathan to preserve it. And because she did not trust you to remember why it mattered. Anger rose in me. You allowed your brother to negotiate a sale without telling anyone. I did not know he was selling. You knew I had forgotten the agreement. Yes. Why didn't you remind me? Elise's answer came slowly. Because after I left, I wanted you and Nathan to discover what happened when I stopped saving you from each other. The admission hurt. You were willing to let the building fail to prove a point? No. I told Mom's former attorney to contact me if a sale notice was recorded. Nathan avoided recording it. He planned to transfer authority first and file everything together. You should have told me years ago. And you should have called after I left. You did not. You waited for me to apologize for challenging Nathan. She was right. I had described our silence as Elise's choice because that version did not require me to dial her number. Send the agreement to Beatrice. I already have. When? After you called from the airport. The right of first purchase agreement could stop Crosswind's immediate sale. It could not repair Riverton Court. The following morning, Beatrice arranged an independent inspection and financial review. A structural engineer, electrician, accountant, and housing consultant spent 4 days examining the building. Their report was devastating. Riverton Court required nearly $7 million in immediate work. The garage needed partial reconstruction. The electrical system required replacement. 2 fire escapes had to be closed. The older elevator could not be certified without major repairs. The building held only $620,000 in reserves. That amount included security deposits belonging to tenants. Nathan had used more than $400,000 in tenant deposits to pay emergency contractors. When confronted, he did not deny it. We met in Beatrice's conference room. Nathan sat across from me with 2 attorneys. June sat beside Beatrice. Elise appeared through a video connection. You used tenant deposits, I said. I borrowed from the account. You cannot borrow another person's deposit. I replaced most of it. With what? My money. Nathan placed bank statements on the table. He had restored $270,000. The remaining shortage was $148,000. The boiler failed during winter, he said. The operating account was empty. You refused the emergency loan because the interest rate offended you. Should I have allowed 42 apartments to lose heat? You should have told the tenants. And said what? We use the money protecting your homes, so please do not ask whether it will be returned. You should not have used it. That is an excellent answer after the boiler has been repaired. Elise interrupted through the screen. You always create an emergency large enough to make consent seem irresponsible. Nathan looked toward her. And you always arrive after the emergency with a speech about process. This time, your process involved sending Dad across the country under a fake medical declaration. I needed 48 hours. To do what? Complete the transaction before he panicked. I looked at my son. You believed I would stop the sale because I was emotional. I knew you would. You did stop it. You copied my signature. You signed the strategic review resolution. You signed the power of attorney. You approved a sale in every conversation until the decision became real. That is not consent. No. It is what I had left after 20 years of trying to make you decide something. Nathan's voice cracked on the final sentence. He turned away and recovered quickly. I gave this building my life. I missed June's school events. My marriage ended because every holiday involved a broken pipe or a tenant complaint. I mortgaged my house. I answered calls at 3 in the morning while you remained the beloved owner who remembered everyone's name. I worked there for 30 years before you took over. And then you stopped. The words remained between us. Nathan looked at June. And now my daughter believes I am a criminal because she read 6 documents without living through 6 years. June's face tightened. "I think you are a criminal because you forged Grandpa's signature." Nathan flinched. The statement did not come from an attorney or investigator. It came from the person whose opinion still had the power to wound him. "I was trying to protect what remained for you," he said. "By helping a developer demolish it? By giving you an inheritance instead of a condemned building. I never asked for an inheritance. You are 19. You do not know what you will need. That does not mean you get to decide what lies I should inherit." Nathan looked down. For the first time, I saw the true structure of our family. I had controlled Nathan by refusing decisions. Nathan controlled June by making them for her. Each generation called its method protection. Crosswind responded to Ruth's agreement by issuing a formal purchase offer to the tenants. The residents had 6 months to match $26 million. The amount was impossible. Nathan said that proved Ruth's agreement was symbolic. Elise said it created leverage. The tenants said they needed information before either sibling spoke for them again. They elected a 5-person committee. The members included Darnell Price, Riverton Court's maintenance supervisor, Mrs. Alvarez, who had lived there for 34 years, a nurse named Hannah Cole, a restaurant worker named Samir Patel, and a young teacher named Denise Ward. They hired their own attorney. They asked me, Nathan, and Elise to attend a meeting in the community room. More than 70 residents crowded inside. Children sat on the floor. Older tenants stood along the walls. The room Ruth once used for holiday meals had become a hearing about whether her neighbors could remain. Darnell began. "We are not here to decide which Hale is the good one. We are here because every one of you made decisions about our homes without giving us the same information." He looked at Nathan. "You negotiated our removal." Then at Elise. "You possessed an agreement that could protect us and never told us it existed." Then at me. "You promised low rents while allowing the building to become unsafe." No one applauded. No one defended us. Mrs. Alvarez raised her hand. "Mr. Hale, did you know the fire escapes were failing? I knew repairs were recommended. That is not what I asked." I looked at her. I knew enough to ask better questions. I did not ask them. She nodded. Nathan looked surprised. Perhaps he expected me to protect myself by making him solely responsible. Samir asked Nathan about the relocation payments. $30,000 sounds large, Samir said. "My family rents a 3-bedroom apartment here for $1,400. The same apartment elsewhere costs almost $3,000. $30,000 gives us less than 2 years before we cannot afford the city." Nathan answered. "Without the sale, you may receive nothing when the building is condemned." Denise asked. "Did you explore a non-profit purchase?" "Not seriously." "Why?" "Because their offers were too low." "Too low for the repairs or too low for your consulting contract?" Nathan's expression hardened. "Both can be true." That answer was honest. It did not help him. Elise presented several alternatives. A tenant cooperative could receive public financing. A non-profit housing fund might purchase a controlling interest. The neighboring parking lot could be sold separately to reduce the amount needed. Nathan challenged every proposal. The public financing process was slow. The non-profit's preliminary valuation was only $16 million. Selling the parking lot would reduce future income. Construction costs could exceed estimates. He was not wrong. A cooperative plan offered no guaranteed rescue. Then June stood at the back of the room. "There is another Crosswind document." Nathan turned toward her. "What document?" June opened her laptop. She displayed an internal Crosswind assessment. The developer valued the parking lot alone at $9 million because a new transit station was planned nearby. Nathan had negotiated a separate option allowing Crosswind to purchase the lot through a company he controlled. The option price was $4 million. If the full sale closed, Nathan's company could buy the lot cheaply and transfer it to Crosswind for nearly twice as much. The room erupted. I looked at my son. Is it real? Nathan did not answer quickly enough. It was a contingency arrangement. You planned to make $5 million on the lot. Before taxes, financing costs, and risk. You told me the consulting fee was your only additional payment. I did not expect the option to be exercised. Then why hide it? Nathan looked around the room. Because none of you understand what it took to bring Crosswind to the table. They wanted certainty. I created it. With my signature. With an authority you gave me because you did not want responsibility. The statement was cruel. It was also partly true. I stood. Nathan is right about one thing. The room quieted. I gave him responsibility without enough oversight. I ignored reports because reading them made me afraid. I kept rents low without placing enough money into repairs. And I allowed everyone to praise me for generosity while my son found the money to support it. Nathan stared at me. He had waited years to hear the admission. It arrived in the same moment I refused to excuse him. But he copied my signature. He attempted to send me away. He hid money he expected to earn. And he negotiated your displacement without giving you Ruth's promised opportunity. My failure does not transform his choices into necessary ones. His failure does not make mine disappear. Darnell asked the only question that mattered. What are you willing to give up to make another option possible? I looked around the community room. For decades, Riverton Court had made me wealthy on paper. The land and building were worth more than I had imagined when Ruth and I bought them. I had called the increase my legacy. The tenants had produced that value by remaining through years when other people avoided the neighborhood. My 60%, I said. Nathan stood. What? I will transfer my ownership to a tenant-controlled trust if a financially responsible purchase and repair plan can be completed. You are giving away more than $15 million. No. I am admitting it was never mine alone. You cannot make that decision emotionally. It is my property. Nathan laughed bitterly. So now ownership matters. He left the room. Transferring my shares did not solve the financial problem. It changed the mathematics. Without needing to pay me for 60% of the property, the tenant cooperative had to purchase only Nathan's and Elise's interests, settle debts, and finance repairs. Elise agreed to donate 5 of her 15% and sell the remaining 10 at a reduced valuation. Nathan refused to discuss his share. The city housing department offered a low-interest rehabilitation loan. A non-profit investment fund committed $6 million. The parking lot received competing offers. Crosswind offered $9.2 million. A local hospital offered $8 million to build an outpatient clinic and public parking structure. The hospital proposal included discounted spaces for Riverton residents and no private control of the apartment building. The tenant committee chose the hospital. They gave up more than $1 million to avoid remaining connected to Crosswind. Nathan called the decision irresponsible. Darnell called it the first price the residents had chosen to pay themselves. The combined financing left a $2 million gap. Nathan's 25% was worth more than that. If he demanded full payment, the cooperative would fail. He knew it. 3 days before Crosswind's offer expired, Nathan came to my apartment. It was the first time we had been alone since the airport. He looked tired. The confidence he wore in meetings had disappeared. June is staying with Elise. I know. She refuses to answer me. She needs time. She testified to investigators. You forged a document. Nathan walked toward the window. Below us, residents crossed the courtyard carrying groceries, laundry, and children. I did not intend to steal from you. You intended to make my decision unnecessary. Yes. The admission arrived without defense. Why the one-way ticket? If the sale was filed while you remained here, the court might question whether you had withdrawn from management. Your relocation made the authority clearer. You were building evidence that I had abandoned Riverton Court. I was building a transaction that could survive your panic. Do you hear yourself? Every day. Nathan sat down. I spent 6 years believing that if I saved enough money, repaired enough damage, and protected enough people, eventually you would admit I was the one who stayed. Stayed instead of whom? Elise. Mom. You. I did not leave. You lived upstairs. That is not the same as being present. I looked at my son. He was 47 years old. For most of his life, I had praised him by giving him another problem. When you solved something, I assumed you could carry the next thing. Yes. When you warned me, I treated it as pessimism. Yes. When I refused decisions, you made them. Yes. And then you decided that being necessary placed you above permission. Nathan looked down. Yes. He removed a folder from his coat. Inside was an agreement transferring his 25% interest to the cooperative for $2 million paid over 12 years. The amount covered his mortgage and part of the money he had invested. It eliminated the millions he expected from Crosswind. Why are you doing this? Because June asked whether I wanted her to remember me as the man who saved the building or the man who tried to sell everyone inside it. What did you tell her? That I no longer knew the difference. He placed the agreement on the table. I am not doing this for forgiveness. The investigators will still proceed. June may never trust me again. You may not either. Do you regret it? The forgery? Yes. The sale? Part of me still thinks it was the safest financial choice. That is not a satisfying apology. I am trying to stop making answers useful instead of honest. I recognize the effort. I did not call it redemption. The cooperative purchase closed 4 months later. It was called the Riverton Housing Trust. The residents elected 7 board members. Only 1 seat was reserved for a Hale family representative. Elise held it for the first year. I held none. My apartment became subject to the same lease terms as everyone else's. I paid rent. Mrs. Alvarez found that deeply entertaining. Repairs began immediately. Residents endured noise, dust, temporary relocations, and repeated water shutoffs. The renovation cost more than expected. The cooperative nearly missed its first loan payment. Nathan's warnings had not been imaginary. Saving Riverton Court was difficult even after ownership changed. But when decisions were painful, the tenants made them through meetings and recorded votes. No one described consent as an obstacle to efficiency. The investigation into Nathan's documents continued. He pleaded guilty to filing a falsified instrument and attempting to use an altered declaration in a property transaction. Because the sale had been stopped, the documents had been surrendered, and he cooperated fully, he received probation, community service, and financial penalties. He also lost his property management license for 5 years. Some tenants believed the punishment was too lenient. Others remembered the winters he kept the heat running and believed it was too severe. Both groups were speaking about the same man. Nathan moved into a small rented house outside the city. He began working for a construction estimating company where he had no authority to sign anyone else's name. June remained in Portland with Elise for 8 months. She returned for the cooperative's first annual meeting. Nathan attended but sat near the back. After the meeting, he approached her. June looked ready to leave. "I will not ask you to forgive me," Nathan said. "Good. I will answer questions if you have them. I have one." She looked at him. "Would you have told Grandpa after the sale?" Nathan's face changed. He could have said yes. No document could prove otherwise. No, he answered. I would have told him enough to make the result sound unavoidable. June looked away. That is what I thought. I am sorry. For lying? For believing the outcome gave me the right to. June did not embrace him. She did not say she understood. But before leaving, she said, "You can email me once a week. Not more." Nathan nodded. "I can do that." For the first time, he accepted a boundary without explaining why another arrangement would be more practical. Elise and I repaired our relationship more slowly. She had returned to help the cooperative and remained through the first construction phase. One evening, we sat in the courtyard after most residents had gone inside. Workers had removed part of the old brick wall, exposing layers of repairs I had made across 30 years. "You should have told me about Ruth's agreement," I said. "Yes. Why didn't you?" "I was angry. I wanted you to experience what happened when the child who questioned you stopped doing the questioning. That could have harmed the tenants. I knew the agreement would appear if Nathan filed a public sale. I did not know he would try to avoid the filing." "You still took a risk with other people's homes." "Yes." She did not improve the answer. "Why did you never call me?" she asked. "Pride. That is not specific enough." I thought for a moment. Calling you would have required admitting you might have been right about Nathan. It would also have required hearing what I did to make you leave. Elise nodded. "That sounds more expensive." "What?" "The truth. It usually costs something when it is real." I reached for her hand. She allowed me to hold it. That was not forgiveness completed. It was contact restored. The repairs took 2 years. The western boiler was replaced. The electrical system was rebuilt. The garage reopened. Every fire escape passed inspection. The hospital constructed its clinic beside Riverton Court. The first floor included a small pharmacy and community health office. The parking structure blocked part of my old river view. I complained once. Mrs. Alvarez reminded me that democracy had consequences. I stopped complaining where she could hear. The cooperative placed a plaque inside the community room honoring Ruth. I objected to one sentence describing her as the founder of the tenant purchase protection. "That makes it sound like I opposed it," I said. Darnell looked at me. "You forgot it existed. That is a form of opposition with better manners." The sentence remained. 3 years after the airport, I finally traveled to Portland. This time, Elise had invited me. I booked the ticket myself. I selected my seat, printed the confirmation, and placed the return boarding information inside my coat pocket. Nathan offered to drive me to the airport. Our relationship had improved enough for short journeys and practical conversations. It had not improved enough for either of us to pretend the past was finished. He arrived early. My suitcase was waiting beside the door. "Did you pack it?" he asked. "Yes." "Medication?" "In the outside pocket." "Return ticket?" "In my coat." Nathan nodded. He did not check. At the airport entrance, he removed the suitcase from the car. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Dad, I need to tell you something." "What?" "When I booked the one-way ticket, I told myself you would be happier in Portland. I told myself Elise would take care of you better than I could." That was not the reason. No. But it was the sentence that allowed me to sleep. I looked at him. "Do you want me to tell you that I understand?" "No." I wanted to say it without using the explanation to ask for anything. That is progress. It does not feel like it. Most progress feels smaller from inside. Nathan handed me the suitcase. "I hope you have a good trip." "Thank you." Then he asked, "Are you coming back?" The question was not about the flight. "Yes," I said. "I am coming back." At security, an officer asked whether I had packed the suitcase myself. I answered yes. He asked whether it had remained under my control. I answered yes again. The suitcase passed through the scanner without being opened. I reached the gate and sat near the window. Planes moved across the runway beneath a gray morning sky. 3 years earlier, my son had attempted to turn a flight into evidence that I had surrendered my home, my property, and my judgment. The ticket was one way because my return would have complicated his plan. He believed removing me from the building would remove my ability to decide. But Nathan had learned that method from me. I removed myself from decisions while keeping the authority attached to them. I allowed him to carry consequences without giving him the freedom to change the system. Then I judged what he became while carrying it. Understanding that did not excuse the forged signature. It did not make the one-way ticket an act of care. It did not return June's trust or erase the fear of 42 households. Understanding is not a pardon. It is the point where accountability stops requiring a simple villain. Nathan was responsible for what he did. Elise was responsible for her silence. June was responsible for taking documents she did not own, even though exposing them protected us. I was responsible for building a family where emergencies became the only reliable way to make anyone listen. Riverton Court survived because control was finally separated from ownership. The building no longer belonged to the family whose name had been attached to every decision. It belonged to the people who woke inside it each morning. An announcement called my boarding group. I stood and checked my coat pocket. The return reservation was still there. I boarded the plane because I wanted to go. I knew who was meeting me. I knew where I would sleep. And I knew the date I was coming home. Those details sounded ordinary. Once, I would have considered them too small to matter. Now I understand that freedom often exists inside ordinary details. The ability to read the document. The right to hear the complete plan. The space to refuse. The knowledge that another person has not already answered on your behalf. As the plane lifted from the runway, I looked down at the city. Somewhere below, Riverton Court stood behind scaffolding in the shadow of a new parking structure. It was no longer my legacy. It was something better. A place whose future did not depend on one family believing it always knew best. My son once put me on a one-way flight because he believed my absence would make his decision permanent. 3 years later, I took the same journey with a return ticket in my own pocket. This time, I was not being removed. I was traveling. This time, no one had called my silence consent. And this time, I knew exactly where I was going.